Draco Malfoy and the Truth of the Heart by Draco will hear about this. Chapter 15. If we survive. Warning, this chapter contains adult content, so I will be taking that part out and posting it as a treat for my members. Hey! Hermione smiled at him, lingering in the doorway as Draco jotted down another quick note. Hey yourself! Draco grinned, patting the place on the couch Harry and himself had been sleeping on for the last couple of nights, indicating for her to sit down next to him. She did so without another word, glancing at his notebook. What are you doing? She asked. I'm still trying to figure out how to create that magical void so we can destroy Horcrux with it. Draco sighed. My calculations are always just the slightest bit off. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Well, we have the sword now, Hermione reminded him. Yes, but Harry just dealt that away to get Griphook to smuggle us into Gringotts, now didn't he? Draco told her impatiently. He might be convinced that he can outsmart a goblin, but I am not. So I'm working on our plan B. Good idea, Hermione nodded, leaning into him a little. To be honest, I hate that whole plan. It's bound to go horribly wrong. I know, Draco sighed, but it's the best we have. Harry is right, but the way my aunt questioned me, there's sure to be a Horcrux hidden in her vault. Hermione hummed before admitting very quietly, I'm not sure I could pull off acting like Bellatrix convincingly. Draco held in, biting his lip before whispering, I had the same thought. She looked at him pleadingly. Can't you help me? She begged. Maybe we could, I don't know, practice? We could try. Draco sighed, shutting both his notebook and the journal he had been reading and putting it aside. Let's see your Bellatrix, then. What now? She asked, looking at him with wide eyes. Do you need to get in character? Draco scoffed. Need to cast a few unforgivables first? Hermione flinched, and Draco felt bad immediately. Sorry, he sighed. You know, she said, sounding miserable, you'd make a much better Bellatrix, I'm sure of it. Draco held in, considering. You know, he muttered, that's not a half-bad idea. What? Hermione asked, gaping at him. Why don't I do it? He shrugged. She's my family, after all. I know her kind better than you do. I can pull it off, I'm sure. But you're, well, not a woman, Hermione finished rather lamely. Polyjuice Potion won't discriminate by gender, Draco shrugged. I can very well transform into a woman if I want to. It will be strange for me, sure, and I might have to practice walking convincingly in heels, but, well, so do you, Hermione. No offense. I don't know, Draco, Hermione bit her lip. Harry will hate this. Harry wants to wrap me in cotton and unpack me when the war is over. Draco rolled his eyes. He hates everything on principle, Hermione. That should not be a deterring factor. Absolutely not, Draco. Harry! No. It only makes sense. Oh, does it? Tell me how it makes sense for you to take the body of your aunt after she almost tortured you into insanity a couple of days ago so that we can break into her vault. Please. Enlighten me. Well, someone has to do it and I'm the best man for the job. You're not. You're the most vulnerable out of all of us, and you should be well hidden, not exposed like this. That's crap, Harry. You're the most vulnerable, not me. Not to mention I won't be exposed. I'll be camouflaged. If something goes wrong, you'll be the one they go after first. You'll be right there with me, and you'll get me out of there. What if we can't? I'm not risking you like that, Draco. Oh, but you'll risk Hermione. That's not... Hermione, who's more likely to expose herself because she doesn't know a thing about my family or how to behave convincingly as a member of it? She'll give herself away in a heartbeat. At least I can act as if I don't give a crap about people, Harry. So I'm going to do this. End of discussion. Harry stared at him, jaw tight. Then he looked away, shaking his head. You never listen to me, he grumbled. Oh, look who's talking! Draco shot back. Harry's shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked very, very tired. I just want you to be safe, he whispered. Draco sighed and walked over to him, pulling him against his chest. Then let's work on this plan, and make sure it's as foolproof as it can get. All right? Draco shrugged, jested. That's the best we can do. Harry nodded and rested his head against Draco's shoulder. Harry had, very reluctantly, caught him up on everything that had happened while Draco had been out cold over the last couple of days, bit by bit, as if he was afraid Draco would have some sort of seizure if he was fed too much information at once. From what Draco had gathered, the Dark Lord was now in possession of the Elder Wand, which had been buried with Dumbledore, a fact that Weasley still smarted from because Harry had kept his visions quiet until it was too late to do anything to change it.
You were right.
Harry had shrugged.
The Horcruxes are more important than the Hallows.
Draco also suspected that he hadn't wanted to leave Draco behind while he was unsure whether or not he would recover, but they did not talk about that. Some things were better left unsaid. Harry had apparently spent a long time questioning Ollivander about wand lore, though he wasn't very forthcoming on any conclusions he'd taken from that conversation. When Draco tried to needle him, he became very quiet, so he eventually gave up. He was far more willing to discuss his plan to break into Gringotts to steal whichever Horcrux his aunt was hiding away in her vault. Until now, at least. And whenever Draco's new role in their plan came up, he would get that sour look on his face that made Draco ask every legendary wizard he knew for patience. Maybe one of them was listening and sympathetic to his plight. I'm half expecting him to dose me with sleeping potion on the day of our departure so he can sneak off without me, Draco grumbled, striding around the deserted girls' guest room in his transfigured high heels. He was slowly getting the hang of it, if you might say so. Hermione sighed, throwing him a pained look. He wouldn't do that, she replied, though she didn't seem too confident. You know how Harry gets when things don't go his way, and especially when he thinks you'll be in danger. Then he'll swallow it down and it will be fine. I'll remind you of that when he enacts his 5-year-old on a rampage act again, Draco murmured, but he held in when the door opened and Luna stepped into the room. For a moment he remained frozen, but when she just looked him up and down and said, Nice shoes, Draco. They suit you, he relaxed. Thank you, he nodded. I'm feeling quite majestic myself. Hermione giggled, and Luna walked to her side of the room to pick up a notebook Bill had given her a couple of days ago. Draco thought she used it for drawing. We are back from Muriel's, Luna told him absent-mindedly. Ollivander arrived, safe and sound. That's good news, Draco said. Any word on where they're planning to put the 4 of you yet? Not as such, Luna shook her head. We can't go home, obviously. The safe house your mum is hiding at came up. Sounds like a good solution, Draco nodded. I'm sure Mother and Ted would love the company. Luna smiled at him as she straightened up. Well, I'm going back downstairs, she announced. I wanted to draw some nargles for Killian. He wanted to know what they looked like. And with that, they were left to their own devices again, Draco with a smile on his face. I'll miss them once they're gone, he told Hermione quite earnestly. They're good company. It's better for them to be far away from us, though, Hermione reminded him. We're living targets. I know, Draco sighed, but it's nice to have other people around to talk to for a change. It was true, and he made good use of that while he could, whether it was lazing around with Yatin, indulging Luna's idle chatter, or having a pleasant conversation with Killian or Bill. Draco had never been very outgoing, but after having been isolated from society for so long, it was really nice to have people around again. So much so that he was secretly disappointed when their departure was decided upon. You know, Yatin told him in a quiet voice on their last evening together as Killian and Luna led a loud game of exploding snap in the living room, and the two of them hung back watching. I'd come along if you'd let me. You wouldn't even need to tell me what you were doing. Draco smiled at him. I know you would, he said, but you can't. It's better if you wait things out somewhere safe. Yatin sighed, frowning. Why do you get to throw yourself into danger, and I get to hide? Yatin demanded. I'm older than you. It should be the other way around. Because some stupid adults decided that's how it's supposed to be, and now we're in over our heads, Draco sighed, shrugging. We don't have a choice yet. We can't get out. But you can. If you really want to fight, talk to the Order about it. But you can't fight with us. Not yet, at least. What we're doing, we can't take any more people. You're taking Griphook, Yatin pointed out. He's a means to an end, Draco rolled his eyes. We'll part ways after we did what we intend to do. Fine, Yatin huffed. But if you think I'll idly sit in that safe house drinking tea with your mother, you're wrong. I will have a word with the Order. I want to be useful. Knew that, Draco smiled. I'm sure they could find a use for you. The next morning they bid their goodbyes, and it was only them, Griphook, and Bill and Fleur left in the house. It felt strangely empty, though it was still overflowing, seeing that there still weren't enough bedrooms to house them all. Weasley and Hermione decided, in quite a surprising move, to give the bedroom the girls had previously taken up to Harry and Draco. "It would be a waste for me to use a double bed alone," Hermione rolled her eyes. "There are two perfectly fine sofas downstairs. Ron and I can sleep down there, and Harry and you can get some privacy." So that's what they did, though honestly, it wouldn't be long until they, too, were going to leave Shell Cottage for good. Fleur was vehement to keep them put, and wouldn't hear anything about their departure whenever it was brought up, but internally they'd already decided upon a date within the next week. As soon as they had worked out the kinks of their plan with Griphook, which happened to be a rainy Monday afternoon.
Let's go tomorrow,
Harry insisted, but Draco shook his head, stalling him. "The day after tomorrow," he said. "No need to rush. We make mistakes when we rush. Give us one more day." Harry grumbled, but most surprisingly, listened to him. It was Tuesday night when they were lounging together in the living room, Bill insisting on a nightcap together before they left the following morning, that they received an unexpected visitor. It had been a quiet, cozy atmosphere. Harry and Draco were snuggled up together on the smaller sofa, a thin blanket draped above them, and Harry's arm around Draco's shoulder, as Draco fought to keep his eyes open, too comfortable, against Harry's chest. He started when someone knocked on the front door. Bill was on his feet immediately, reaching for his wand. Griphook quickly slipped out of the room and up the stairs, quick to hide. "Who is it?" Bill called. "It is I, Remus John Lupin!" Remus's voice was to be heard through the thick-wooden door. "I am a werewolf, Mammoth Nymphadora Tonks, and you, secret keeper of Shell Cottage, tell me the address and pay me to come in an emergency!" "Lupin," Bill muttered and crossed the room to pull the door open. When Remus stumbled into the room, he was white-faced, and for a moment Draco suspected the worst, but then he called, his voice wobbly, "It's a boy!" Draco's heart stopped, and then restarted. "We've named him Ted," Remus continued, "after Dora's father." "What?" Hermione was the first to react. Tonks has had the baby?" Yes, she's had the baby!" he shouted, and then everyone was on their feet. There was an uproar of delirious shouts and a blur of hugs, and then Bill was handing out wine for celebration. At last, Remus slung an arm around each Harry and Draco's shoulder, looking at them with red-rimmed eyes. "You being godfathers?" he asked. "Me?" Harry stammered. "You, yes, of course. Dora quite agrees. No one better than the two of you." "It would be an honor, Remus!" Draco beamed at him. Yeah, blimey." Remus laughed and pulled both into a hug. Then they toasted with the rest of them. It was the happiest Draco had been in forever, and from the faces of the others it seemed like they all quite agreed with this assessment. Remus was practically glowing as he told them that their baby boy was already changing his hair color like his mother, and it all seemed like something out of someone else's life. As abruptly as Remus had appeared, though, he had to leave again. He took all their well wishes for Dora with him, and then he swept off into the night again, leaving them reeling from the news. When Draco and Harry went to bed not long after, he still felt a strange mix between elated and numb from Remus's visit. "Can you imagine that Remus and Dora are parents now?" Draco muttered after he had changed, climbing into bed with Harry. "It seems a little unreal, doesn't it?"
"I can't believe we're godparents," Harry replied, looking troubled.
Then he added,
"I'm going to be just as reckless a godfather as Sirius was to me."
"That's..." Draco started, frowning. "Harry, no, you can't think that way!" Harry sighed, closing his eyes. Draco watched his face for a moment, then he cut the light and moved closer to him. For a long while, Harry didn't say anything, and Draco thought they were going to go to sleep, but then he murmured,
"I can't convince you to stay behind tomorrow."
"You know the answer to that, Harry," Draco sighed, feeling bone deep tired suddenly.
"I do,"
Draco breathed. He sounded resigned. Draco nodded.
"It was worth another attempt, though."
"Was it?" Draco asked. Harry brought his hand up to Draco's hair, guarding his fingers through it.
"I have another question for you, then," he continued.
"Should I be scared?" Draco drawled.
"I don't know."
Harry frowned.
"That depends on your answer, I guess."
Draco shifted on his pillow so he could glance up at Harry. Through the curtains, just enough moonlight filtered in that he could make Harry's eyes out clearly. Fire away, then, Draco said evenly. Harry looked at him for a long moment, and then he whispered,
If we make it out of this war alive, will you marry me?
Draco's breath halted as he stared at Harry, eyes wide. Whatever he had been expecting, it wasn't that.
Draco,
Harry breathed, reaching out to cup Draco's cheek with his hand, tracing the line of his jaw with his thumb.
I love you more than anything, and I need to know that we have a future together. I need to have that hope so that I have something to pull me through. It's probably mental and stupid and...
Harry! Draco cut him off with slow smiles spreading over his face. Stop babbling! You don't need to justify yourself. Not in front of me.
Oh,
Harry muttered, biting his lip.
so?
Draco smiled at him. Isn't it obvious? He whispered. Of course my answer is yes. Harry let out a breath bigger than himself, and then he was kissing him with everything he had. Draco wondered absent-mindedly how long Harry had thought about asking, if he had ever expected Draco to say no. It seemed utterly ridiculous to Draco. Harry shifted their positions, sliding one of his pajama-clad legs between Draco's and moving until he was basically covering him. His hand slid into Draco's hair, fisting it as he deepened the kiss. Draco reminded himself to breathe, but his heart was hammering, and his lungs seemed to refuse to draw air as Harry's tongue tangled with his, igniting every nerve in his body.